welcome back to this update on the Yarslow Model Railway. The last time you were with me I had piles of timber waiting to be turned into roof lining and all sorts of things. So let me update you, bearing in mind that I now have some track and a train that, if I turn a controller, will actually run. Let me go back a couple of weeks and bring you up to date. Well, here's the plan laid out on the baseboard. And of course, having a plan is one thing. The key is to turn it into a model railway, and that's what started today with the initial survey and laying out from 3 points, which I made there, and then loads and loads of measuring to lay out these 3 approach curves, and then to lay out the storage sidings. That's the point work for the storage sidings and the main line. On the inside, this is the Trinity Square approach line that comes around here, meets up with the point here, and then there's a kickback from that into the loco storage area, which is here, and then eventually all these sidings will trod off down the shed. This line will go into the Trinity Square storage, which will be located here at the front of the board. And in amongst all the mess that accompanies building model railway, we've made a start with 3 of the storage lines at the back there. All this track work has been laid. You can see all of the frog wires are in, and at this end not only are the points laid and we've hashed out some track, but you can see the start of these point control boards that are being made. Some of them, if I come over here, because of width restrictions, some of them are in this format, so a long thin tag strip, but you can see most of them are the short fat square versions. Now this is my kit and weapons of choice for laying Pico Code 75 streamline track. It's laid on 2mm cork, which I've cut into strips. It's actually the width of a ruler, which is adequate enough for the storage sidings. I'll use wider on the main line, but for the storage sidings this is absolutely fine. For the points I actually cut a triangular shape. The track centres in the storage sidings are quite tight, so the ordinary track setter gauges don't work, so I made this template up that showed the track centres that I wanted. So the idea is that you connect a piece of track to the piece that you've just laid, and then, normally a yard long, the other end of the yard piece you then measure your track centres using the ruler up against the track, and then the Pico track pins are then pushed in with a decent set of small pliers, hammered home with a small hammer, and then laying the ruler from the pin that you just put in back to a previous pin that you just put in. In fact, this is just a short version. I have a 40-inch version of this ruler. So you lay that alongside the track, and then by squeezing the track next to the ruler, you then pin through and make sure it's dead straight, and that's how you get dead straight track. Where that isn't possible, if there's a point in the way or something, then the Pico track setter gauge here, I've got a full set of these. This is the straight one, ideal. The slots in the middle mean you can pin through the slots to make sure you get a nice straight bit, and when you've finished, use a mirror just to look along the line of the track and make sure it's right. And there's nothing better than just lining that mirror up and making sure that you've got a perfect straight line. If track needs to be cut, I use a pair of Xeron cutters and a small file just to make sure that the ends are nice and clean, so that the rail joiners go on easily. Not an expensive kit, but essential if you're going to lay decent straight level track. Well, we've made some progress. As we can see here, the mainline storage sidings are now laid. There are 8 tracks for the up line, 8 for the down, and then the track right at the back there and the track right at the front here are the through lines. Now on the front here, this is where the Trinity Square storage sidings are going to be. I don't have mimic panels and remote switching here for the points, because this will only come into operation when I'm having a full operating session. So here, the switches that are on top of the point motors are wired directly into the frog. So you can see here the stock rails and the blades are joined. The brakes between the blades and the frogs are broken, and then this switch will simply move with the point motor and move the polarity of the frog either for normal or reversed running. Well, I've talked a fair bit about these point control boards, and now that I've finished wiring them, let me talk you through how it works. Clearly, point is connected to the point motor, and these red wires here connect to the control panel, and they will move the point backwards and forwards as you move the switch on the control panel. That's fairly straightforward. Normally the switch on the top here would operate the frog polarities, but in my particular case this wire here comes from a 12-volt power source and is a feed for the relays. Now, depending on whether the point is in passive position, that is normal in this case, the train is set to go straight here, that means that this wire is activated, and in my particular case this simply transfers the power from this point motor to the one further up the line over here. When the point goes into active mode, that is, the point is set into the reversed position and the siding comes into play, in this case it's siding number 1, 2, 3, 4, then this relay, 12-volt relay power, is transferred onto this wire, which runs to the relay. This goes to a return to complete the circuit, and thus the relay becomes live. Now what happens when the relay goes live? Well, this is an 8-pin relay. That means you have 2 pins over here for the power in and return, and then you have 2 independent switches here where the center pin is the in and the left and right are the options. Now when the point is in its normal position like this, or as at the moment when the circuits are all turned off, the relay is in its passive mode, which means in effect that the power comes into the center pin and transfers out onto these inner pins. Now what does that mean? Well, in this particular case, these black and yellow wires run frog polarity, so the frog comes into the center pin, and in passive or normal mode this wire on the far side becomes energized by whatever's coming down this feed wire, and that means of course that the frog matches the polarity of the far rail. When the point is changed, the relay goes active, the near pin here becomes active, and the frog polarity changes to the near rail. So that's how those 3 pins there change the polarity of the frogs as the point motor changes. Now we're going to do the same thing in the terms of switching from one pin to another with these black wires, and these are for the mimic panel LEDs. There is a 6-volt LED supply which comes into the center pin. That's what this wire over the top is. Center pin. In passive mode, that power is transferred off via this cable onto the next motor, and in active mode the black cable disappears off down this cable to the control panel, and that activates the LED which shows that the point has changed and now siding number 4 is active. So that's basically the circuits and how they work. So you've got point control, you've got the relay cascade, frog polarity, and the LED cascade. The fifth of the 5 circuits are not so easy to see, so I brought you down the other end where they're nearer the front of the baseboard and a bit easier to see. Now you can actually see here, this is the down line, so this is trains are going in this direction when they leave. If I look back along here, you can see that this is the main line. This one here is the main line. So this is track 1, track 2, track 3, track 4, track 5, track 6. The coach is sitting on 7, and track 8 is the one beyond it. This one out here is 8. Now, with the trains travelling in this direction, let me pinch that coach for a minute and just demonstrate what happens. There we go. So here's my train coming along, and you can see here that I have a feed into the rail. Now this actually doesn't connect to any of the main feeds on the layout, it simply connects to the feed from the next section up there. So that's the feed. The train comes along, and then you can see here that there is an isolator there, and as the train passes over that isolator, it enters into this section, which ends with the isolator here, and there is a track feed there, and this is the slowdown zone. They're 12 inches long, these slowdown zones, all of them. They're all cut the same. And what actually happens is that the power comes from this feed here. If I dive under the baseboard, you'll see, if I can find it, here it is. That is a 22 ohm resistor between the main bus feed and the track feed. So this section of track here is subject to a resistor of 22 ohms. Once the train passes over that and goes past this isolator, you can see that there is another break here, and there's another isolator here. Now clearly this is a double break because this is a live frog point, so there needs to be a double break here to avoid electrical problems. This is the locomotive isolator section. So here, this is long enough to take the engine. I've got my coach here to represent my engine. The engine stops there, and there's enough of a gap at the end here to allow another train to pass without interfering with this. And if you remember from my old layout, I did some brake tests to show how long this slowdown and the stop sections ought to be. So these are all carefully measured. This section here becomes automatically dead when the train runs into it. Now here's the control panel under construction with the, as shown here, these are the point control switches with the LEDs showing which track is live, and these big holes are for these push buttons, and these are for the isolator zones. So if I was to look at down 1, which is this little section here, that'll be the switch that powers the down 1 point, so you should get a light either end to say the 2 points have changed. This is down 1A that we were looking at, and behind it is another one. I'll come on to that in a moment. These push buttons fit into there, like that. So when you push this push button, the power is transferred to the section we've just been looking at, and the locomotive moves off. If I go back to my coach pretending to be an engine, I can show you the structure of each of the sidings. So here's the dead section, isolator, slow down zone, isolator, and then this is where the train goes, this line here, all the way along here, all the way along here, past the sticker that says down 1 to remind me. And in fact, at that sticker there, you can see there's another break. Well, this is another isolator section. This is 1B. Behind it is a resisted feed and another isolator, so this is another slowdown zone, and behind it is another section of track which takes the rest of the train. So you can see that each of these sidings holds 2 trains. The exception to that rule is track 4 in case of the down trains, where that coach is now sitting is the isolator section. There's a slow down zone behind it, and then we get a train zone, and then right in the middle here there is another isolator section, another slow down zone, and then another train section. We go all the way along here, and then, oh hello, there's a third isolator section and a third slow down zone, and then another train section. And that is because track 4 in the down direction holds the stopping passenger trains, and I can get 3 4-coach trains on that one siding. So I'm going to finish with this pile of apparent chaos, but it isn't quite as chaotic as it seems. These are the tag strips to which everything is wired so far back on the layout, and these tag strips will eventually be wired through to the control panel that you just saw. They are all numbered. If I zoom in, you should be able to see that each one of these, I'll get you in focus, there we are, you can see each one of these is numbered, and you'll clearly see a pattern in terms of the colours. So we have this board, these are all of the isolator sections, the 17 isolator sections for the up line, 2 wires to each of course, 2 sides of the switch. The blue is the down line, that's the wiring convention for the layout, reds and blues, you saw that on the track plan. The black wires are all the LEDs, so the LED that will come on when the points are set, and these crimson wires are all the point motors, so these will be connected through to the point control switches. And I have a control sheet here which sets out what all the numbers are and what they all mean, and that's vital. It means that when I come to test this, I know that if I connect, say, 150 through to 159 with a test lead, then that's the circuit for the LEDs, and I can test that they work for a certain direction. Now there's clearly still much to do before this layout gets anywhere near finished in terms of track laying. You can see there's no track at all in the foreground here where there's meant to be a loco storage yard, and there's bits of the Trinity Square sidings missing. At the far end I haven't yet decided what I'm going to do in terms of the cartridge, that's that blank bit there that you can see. But I'm not so worried about that because I'm concentrating for the minute on the sidings here. I've got point motors to do at the far end. I've got some of the isolator wiring still to do on the red track in the middle here. But once that's done, then those 5 circuits I've been talking about will be complete, and the loops here will be fully functional. If I link power from one end to the other, that engine that you saw running earlier will run from one end of the layout all the way to the other, and my attention will then turn over here. This is where middle junction is going to be. Under all this pile of stuff, middle junction is actually laid out and ready to lay. There it is. That's middle junction hiding under there, under the protection of the track plan. So middle junction will be laid. I've got, you can see there's various bench supplies and power supplies. That's the LED one. These have all got to be set up in this corner so that when I turn the red circuit on under there, all that goes live. You'll know that the red circuit is the circuit that is controlled from the door, so I turn the red circuit off and the whole layout goes dead. That means that I can't leave power supplies and soldering irons on. But once I get middle junction laid, then I can start thinking about building the middle peninsula. The middle peninsula will come from the far end straight down the middle in front of us here and finish broadly where I'm standing, right the way down to where this mat is, and it will encompass Trinity Square, which will be this side, and the branch, which will be this side. And the advantage of that, it will give me an opportunity to lose all this sheet stuff which is waiting to be used for baseboard tops, all that linear stuff over in the corner which is there waiting to be the supports for it and the legs, and then all of the boxes which are in the bottom left hand corner over here. This is all books and magazines and all sorts of other stuff, which is my sort of reference library, if you will. All that will be stored under here, and it will all get a lot tidier. I'll have an opportunity to lose all the stuff that's down there and all the stuff that's here, and I'll have an opportunity to move around a lot easier, and more importantly, get at Yarslow. So I will finish with a look at what Yarslow is going to look like, starting broadly where that white line is on the wall. That's where the Yarslow tracks will arrive. They'll come round here with the branch behind, engine shed in the corner. All this timber clearly will be disappearing. This is all the 3x1 for Central Peninsula. The layout will come all the way down here, past where all the tools are all piled up at the moment. Try not to fall over things that are all over the floor. Down here, till we get to about here somewhere. This is where the physical junction of the branch is, under there somewhere. I have laid out a few bits of track just to get a flavour for it, and then going down under that pile of polystyrene is going to be the platforms as I circumnavigate the desk, and then the tracks. You will see the baseboard's already in place, as you can see. Will come round here, under here, and then I've got the piece across the door missing, and that's because I've still got things going in and out of this building and I don't want to block the door. But eventually the permanent way yard will come across here, connect up with this crossing which has been lost. This is the crossing, this is that famous facing crossover that goes about there somewhere, I think, perhaps not, about there. The facing crossover that allows trains running on the up line to cross back and get back to the cartridge, and then eventually they will meet up. I've drawn some track lines on the board, meet up with those 2 points there, and that gives them access through to this. The key crossover for those trains is this one here. This is the main line, the down main line, so trains will be coming along here on the down line. But if you throw this pair of points, then you have access to the Trinity Square approach line, which is here, and trains will be able to run along the Trinity Square approach line, stop about here, and then reverse using this point here, this point here, and this point here. And where there is a blank at the moment is going to be where the cartridge starts. You can see I've just drawn a line. That's the start of the cartridge. I'm minded at the moment simply to cut that out and then use baseboard material just to drop a cartridge in. So there are sidings here, there are more sidings there, and the cartridge will be right on the front. So easy to get at, a key element for cartridges, and they will be up to 66 inches long. So the cartridges come all the way to here, where strangely enough it says 66-inch cartridge. So that will be the pick up and drop out, and those will be stored on shelves on this back wall. So the operation of getting a cartridge down will be simply to remove it from the shelf there and drop it in here. That will be the process. So there you go. So there we go. There's an update on how far I've got as we approach August. I'm going to show off a little bit by just turning this controller and having this locomotive run back, just to prove that locomotives can run on the layout. Don't ask me why the J52 was given the honour of being the test engine, because it doesn't have a role on the new layout. It was just first out of the box. But what this does prove is that in passive mode, with the relays actually turned off, you can still run and use the main line. That's how the systems are working. I shall get back to you probably towards the end of August, when hopefully Middle Junction will be laid. You'll start to see the beginnings of the Central Peninsula. The tracks at Yarslow will be mapped out, and the J52, which at the moment can only run about 15 feet up and down the layout, will go from here hopefully all the way up the other end of the storey sidings, across the end, and may even be down here. By Christmas I'd like to get it to go all the way around on both tracks. I'm not setting myself a goal or a target or anything silly like that. I'm just a little bit at a time working away. Thank you for sticking with me. If you're new to the channel, do hit the subscribe button and stay tuned. Do have a catch up on all the other little bits. I've got some bite-sized bits coming. I've put a few up recently. I've got a few more to come. So I'll keep you posted on all the things that are going on, and I'll see you soon.